Well, one need that all churches have, regardless of size, is more volunteers. And so today on Practical Church Planting, we're going to share with you 8 tips to attract and keep volunteers.
Welcome back to Practical Church Planting. My name is Brian Androsian, and with me is Dylan Dodson. And today we're going to give you 8 tips to attract and keep volunteers.
And this episode is brought to you by thechurchco.com, the best, fastest, the most beautiful church website builder.
That's a good
We
way to
use
put
them
it.
for our website as well as Practical Church Planting's website. And you can go to thechurchco.com/practical and get 40% off for 2 years,
Yep.
which is crazy amount.
That's crazy.
churchco.com/practical. Put in the promo code practical at checkout. Even if you look at the website later
Mhm.
and you don't go to churchco.com/practical, you're just on the churchco.com. There's a promo code button. If you put practical in, you will get 40% off for 2 full years.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah. And it'll be less expensive and honestly better than wherever you're looking at getting a website right now. So
More
check it
beautiful,
out.
Dylan would say.
More beautiful.
More beautiful.
thechurchco.com/practical.
Yes.
All right, tips to attracting and keeping volunteers. A little side note: we don't call them volunteers at New City,
Nope.
or we try not to. I think we're pretty good at
Right.
it. We
yeah.
call them
It slips sometimes.
sometimes we call them serve team
Mhm.
members because volunteer kind of indicates like something you go and you're not really invested in. You just want to help.
Yep.
And especially if you're a partner in New City Church, this is your church, and so we use the term serve team member. For this episode, we said volunteers because that's kind of the universal thing. But
Yep.
take it or leave it. If you want to try to incorporate that language, sometimes it's kind of awkward because saying volunteer is easier.
Yeah.
But we're just, words matter. And so we want people, they're serving. They're not just volunteering their time randomly. And
Yes. Exactly.
So here are some things that we have learned, done well and not done well over the course of 5+ years
Mhm.
of New City Church. And so here are some things you can do as well. Number one is to be clear on expectations up front. And this is in 2 ways, not just what am I going to do if I'm serving in a position, but also when you're inviting people to serve.
Mhm.
What is it that you're asking them to do? So from stage or whatever, if you do like the serve team push, but you're not clear on how often they have to serve. Obviously, you're not, different positions mean different things and they look differently, but there are probably some universal things that apply to all. So how often am I going to serve? When I serve, when am I going to show up? When am I going to leave? Some of these things can help you on the front end if you're trying to get people to sign up, because it's really awkward for someone to sign up for something and not know what they're going to sign up for, and then they can't back out of it if it's like, oh, you're asking me to serve every single week. I don't want to do that.
Yep.
So for us, we tell people, we ask people to serve once a month. Some people, if they want to, we don't ask people to on the front end. If they want to serve twice a month, we will let them. But that's kind of it. And so they have an idea what they're signing up for. We try to tell people, even if you can't go in a lot of detail, like if you say it from stage, we try to emphasize, hey, we're not going to ask you to be here all the time. Like, we just want you to play a small part of what God is doing. And so all that to say, be clear, especially when someone signs up, what they're actually doing, and also be clear on what you're asking them or how frequently. I think that's the biggest thing, how frequently you're asking them to serve. Because if you're unclear with that, people feel weird asking.
Mhm.
And if it's too much, they feel weird saying, no, I don't want to do that. And so they're just going to avoid it altogether. So try to be clear with some general picture expectations on the front end. This also helps too if you're one service. So if you serve at New City and the kids ministry at New City, right now we're at one service, and so you obviously can't go to church.
Yep.
And so saying things we will only ask you to serve once a month is a really big deal, because people don't want to serve every week.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't come to church every week. And so if they have to serve 2 Sundays a month, and let's say on average they come 3 Sundays a month, but they have to serve in kids 2 Sundays a month. So that means only once a month they go to service,
Yep.
which isn't a lot. And so we want to be clear on expectations up front. Could be helpful.
And I think being clear on expectations helps you get volunteers, because obviously they, like you're saying, they know what to expect and kind of take some of the mystery out of it. They're not wondering how much they're going to serve, but it helps retain them too, because they know what they're signing up for. Like I think this is being clear on expectations is good with anything in life, like relationships or anything, like just being clear on what you expect from people, or what you're hoping, or what you're hoping they'll do, or what you're wanting them to do, is like the key to keeping people engaged. Because if they come on, realize that they're signing on for much more than they're expecting, or in some cases much less than they're expecting. If they don't feel like they're being utilized, if they feel like that's kind of they're not needed where they're serving, then they're probably not going to continue serving for a long period of time. But if you're clear that this is what you expect from them, from when they sign up, and that expectation is truthful, and you live up to that expectation, or expect them to live up to that expectation on their end, and I think you'll get volunteers that'll stick with you for a long time, because they knew what they're getting into from the beginning.
Yeah, and this can be too. if you want to have, if you're also having like one-on-one conversations about someone, and say, let's say you want someone to sign up to, maybe you're talking to someone about serving in production,
Mhm.
right? Going ahead and being proactive and being like, here's what time we ask people to come in and to leave or whatever. Like before you ask them to sign up for it, anything that you can tell people ahead of time
Yeah.
to help assure them that they're not signing their life away. Because what you have to remember is, even if in your church you try to do a really good job of not making people serve too often, a lot of people, particularly people who have maybe been a part of churches for a while and maybe are more high capacity or whatever, are used to being burnt out or they're
Mhm.
used to being overused, and so they can be really hesitant to want to step back into that.
Yeah.
And so just some small things up front, assuring them that you're not asking them to do everything, and letting them know what they're actually going to do before they commit to it and have to awkwardly say they can't do it, can be really helpful.
And I think being clear on expectations and kind of being clear on what the roles look like will help you get couples to serve and not just
Mm.
one spouse, because there's always the question of what do we do with our kids. And so there's certain positions like here, there's certain positions that like it'd be really difficult for you to serve there while you have your kid with you before service. Obviously
Yeah.
not, we have kids ministry, so not during, but like if you're serving on production, if you're running sound, you kind of have to have your focus beyond that. So like you couldn't really be trying to watch your kid while doing that.
Yeah.
And so it could be easy to think like, well, only one of us could serve at the church, period, because the other one's got to watch the kids. But if you're clear on what is kind of needed in each position, you may be able to discover that couples actually can serve at the same time,
Yeah.
because they may be able to serve in different areas where one could actually help with the kids and one while the other one's doing different things. And so just I think being extra clear on what the expectations are and what the roles will actually look like timing and things like
Yeah.
that, will help people see that they probably can do maybe a little bit more than they're expecting.
And one little side note talking about that we've learned is, especially if you do a good job, which we'll talk about this more in a second, about limiting how often people serve. Like, let's say you do once a month. Oftentimes, couples will actually be willing to serve in different positions
Mhm.
if you're just kind of clear on what you're doing. Especially, like, let's say somebody wants to serve on the safety team or somebody wants to serve in kids, for example. So we have that. We have a couple of couples that do that.
Yep.
And on the weeks that it's typically this way, not always, but like the wife is in the kids ministry, the husband's on safety. I know that's very stereotypical, but that's how it's worked out.
Right.
Like, so they're not. What you want to do with those families too is, if there are positions where it's different, if you're like greeting, right? Because then you
Yeah.
can go to service together. But if someone's in sound, and so another couple, there's like the husband does sound and the wife is in kids, and so we schedule them on the same Sundays, so they're not multiple Sundays, one serving here and one serving here, and they're apart.
Yeah.
And so that can also help too, is if you have couples serving in positions where they're going to be away from each other, scheduling them at the same time will retain them and will make them feel like they want to do it. So they're not, again, if you assume people come 3 times a week and the husband does sound once a month, and the wife does, I don't know, kids once a month,
Mhm.
and they're set different, like only once a month could they actually go to church together,
Yeah.
potentially. So,
Yep.
yeah, scheduling them together is a big deal.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, number 2, talk about needs from the pulpit. And this is not just, hey, we want you to serve, but if there are specific areas of needs, not being afraid to say them. Not obviously you can't do this every single week.
Right.
And I think it's also important reminders that you want people to serve for their benefit and for the church's benefit. Like, it's good for everybody involved.
Mhm.
And so a couple weeks ago, this does not always work out like this.
Right.
So
Yeah.
to be clear, but a couple weeks ago, was it our 5-year service? Yeah, we were
Yes,
talking
I
about.
think so,
I was
yeah.
talking about some stuff that people have done, whatever, and I emphasized New City Kids,
Mhm.
and I talked about how it's the biggest difference that you can make is serving in New City is the biggest long-term difference is serving in the kids ministry, and how New City Church exists because that was my story. I grew up in the church, had a good story,
Mhm.
a good experience, and New City wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that. And so, not again, it doesn't always work out this way, but after service, there was 2 or 3 people
Yeah.
signed up for kids.
Which is a big number for
Yeah,
us at one
right.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And again, it's not that I was, but like maybe they would have signed up anyway. I don't know, because we talked about serving in the service or whatever, but maybe not, because it's not just we need people to serve, but like, here's a specific thing. And what we found so often is that people, I don't know, I don't know, pastors or ministry leaders can give their people a bad rap when we get together and complain about stuff. But people want to serve,
Yeah.
and they want to serve where it makes a difference, but they don't know where it is. And so when you say things like, well, every position is needed, well, that might be true.
Mhm.
But if you have really specific needs, not being afraid to, especially if it's appropriate based on the text you're preaching or
Mhm.
whatever, to include it. Now, of course, you can't include this like in your announcement time or your next step time, but that's not the same. That's never the same if you can connect it to what you're actually preaching. And so if there are specific needs, being able to talk about them from the pulpit, um, we have found can sometimes make a big difference.
Yeah, I think everyone attending kind of knows that like there's a need everywhere, but assume all needs are probably equal. Like
Mm.
every church needs people to serve. I think people just kind of know that. But if you're specifying, especially from the pulpit, like this is a specific place we need people to serve, I think it'll go a lot further than just in your announcements time saying we need more people serving, or even they're saying we need people serving in this specific place. Because I don't know. I mean, maybe this is wrong of us as humans, but like I do think it's a little different coming from the pastor from the pulpit, because it seems like this isn't just it seems like this isn't scripted,
Yeah.
so to speak. Like
Yeah.
it seems like this isn't just we told this person to say it and so they're
Mhm.
saying it, but this is like actually he was planning on it because there is a need here. And so I think talking about the specific needs you have, and sometimes even helping qualify it a little bit. Like, so I remember a handful of years ago before New City, there was some need in a church plant that we were with to do production stuff. I think it was sound at the time, and I never stepped behind a soundboard in my life. And so I was talking to the guy, and I was like, "Dude, there's no earthly clue. There's no way." Now I understand that like it's not nearly as complicated as you think when you're walking up to it. But in that conversation, he was able to explain like, no, he's basically able to explain that it's not as complicated as you think. But as someone, if you just say like we have a need in production, and I've had lots of conversations like this here at the church. Anyone who's never done it before just assumes that's not for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a production person. I've never done this before, so I'll just slow things down or whatever, or I'd be better utilized greeting. And I was just talking about someone with that a couple weeks ago, who's an engineer, but doesn't do like computer stuff. And we talked to him about doing screens, and he's like, "I'll try it, but honestly, like I'm not a big tech guy, computer guy. But if you're willing to show me." And after the first time, he's like, "Okay, yeah, this is no big deal. I press space bar every few seconds." But if you can also like if it's something that's maybe a little more technical, help qualify it a little bit of like you don't need experience doing this. If you want to serve, this is a need we have. We can show you, we can train you. But we need you to be available, and we'll help with the rest of it.
Yep. And again, you can't do this for everything all the time.
Yes, of course.
But when there are specific needs, talk about them. And the encouragement here is to talk about them winsomely, not guilt-driven. Now, it is okay to say this is a need we have because you want people to know, but you then don't want to follow it up with, and you need to do it.
Yeah.
Or if you care about the church, you need to do it. Again, this doesn't always work out this way. It just happened to work out well. Being able to share, hey, one of our biggest needs is at New City Kids. Here's some people that have made a difference. Here's how it's impacted me. If you're looking to serve, here's a great way to do it.
Yep.
That's a much better way than, if you guys don't do it, we're just going to close down our kids ministry, which might be true for a time,
Yeah,
but like,
right.
that's just not helpful. And so doing it in a winsome way is important.
And you want people to serve where they want to serve and because they want to. And I think people want to fill a need, but when they feel guilted into it, you may get some people that way, but I don't think you're going to get long-term volunteers that actually want to do it. I think you're going to get people that feel like they were guilted into do it and kind of have to like almost like serve a sentence there until we're on our feet. And so I think actually being like positive about it will help people that actually want to be there join and do it.
There you go. Number 3, Connect cards accessible in the service with a serving box. So here's what we mean. On your Connect card or whatever you call it, you should have an option like interested in serving, but it also needs to be easily and quickly accessible to people. So telling people to go sign up after service, the likelihood of that is a lot smaller than, hey, we talked about it. You can fill it out right now and just check Connect card and then drop it off after the service.
Yep.
The likelihood of that happening is a lot bigger. And so I don't know how it works, different spaces. For us, I'm personally not a fan of putting things on the seat, like a Connect card on every seat, because it looks like it's reserved, particularly if you're a new person and you don't know. You see things on the seat, whatever. So for us, we have seat backs in front of all of our seats, and on the very front row, it's just in the Bible on the floor.
Yep.
But no matter where you sit, there is a Connect card, and there has to be a pin as well. We go through a ton of pins because they
get cheaper.
I literally just bought like 300 pins like a month ago, and they're almost all gone. Like part of this is a couple of churches rent our space, and so they take them, but like. We spend a lot of money on pins, cheap pins, but still. But you got to make it really accessible. And so I would, and too, we talk about this too. We talk about Connect card and getting new people connected, mentioning it from service every single week, and also having it right there is a highly likelihood of someone filling it out. And so whether it's a seat back in front of you, you can also buy, little clip-on things that can go on seats, on the back of seats if it's not built in. I know it can be difficult if you're in a space where it's permanent seating, like a school auditorium or whatever. But it's just we have found it's really helpful that if you can have Connect cards in every seat with the serving box option that they can check when you talk about serving, you're going to get more likely people are going to be more likely to sign up.
Yep. I mean, there's always going to be a lot of things that go through someone's mind between when you tell them and after service. So if it's during your announcements portion, that's probably towards the beginning of service.
Yeah.
Then after that, they've had a whole sermon, worship, all these things between then and them leaving. And even if you mention it again at the end, there's still a lot of things on someone's mind that if it's not there right there, as they leave, they may meet somebody, they may stop and have a conversation. There's a lot of kind of barriers between where they're sitting and if you have like connect cards somewhere else that they need to go and fill out that may distract them or stop them from doing it. And so having it right there, and yeah, like if you have built-in seats, I'm trying to think. I don't know the perfect solution, but I would say there's a solution for every
Yeah.
there's a solution for every scenario.
It depends on how bad you want it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so that's, I mean, yeah, I think that's one of the most important things, having it like right there. And I think if you don't have it right there and you're struggling to get connect cards for serving or for whatever reason, figuring out a way to have them in the seats is gonna like immediately give you a boost in people that are actually filling them out and utilizing them.
Yep. So connect cards accessible in service or the serving box. Having people raise their hand to come get it. People aren't going to do that.
Yeah.
Like it just needs to be there. And there's a lot of probably easy, maybe magnetic clip-ons or whatever that you could creatively find a way to get the connect cards in front of people if you don't have, seats with seat backs in them.
Yeah.
And you could put them on the floor for every seat. I mean, that's an option. People have to bend down, which is not as great, but it's a step, and maybe till you find something else that's easier.
Yep.
So there you go. Number 4, follow up within 1 working day, specifically about serving. Now, let me caveat this by saying I don't know Brittany, who does our hospitality stuff here. I don't know how quickly she does it, but she does a great job.
She does on Sundays.
There you go.
Yeah.
She does it on Sundays now. Even if she hadn't done it on Sundays, she does a great job, and it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So like I'm not. But my thing here, ideally with a working day or within 24 hours. Now, granted, if you're someone who doesn't work on Monday, that's fine. I mean, waiting till Tuesday is fine. It's totally fine. But it has to be done right away.
Yep.
So story time. When Christine and I moved back to Raleigh years ago, before we did our residency, whatever, we were part of a large, well-known church here in the Raleigh area. And because we want to get involved, we signed up to serve one Sunday and heard nothing. It's like, and we know how church stuff works. It's like, even big churches, it may not look like it, but everybody needs help. So we were kind of annoyed about that. And a couple weeks later, they actually did a serve push where they had specific serving cards in all of the seats. And guess what we did?
Yeah.
We signed up.
Sign up again.
And guess what happened? Nothing. We heard from nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like mind-blowing. Like I get things fall through the cracks, but how do you have a massive, it was like beginning of the fall, like August or whatever, and they're doing more services or something and nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is what happens though. People sign up to serve. There's nothing worse than being told this is a need and then hearing nothing or hearing something days and days after the fact. You would assume if somebody really had a need and somebody stepped up to meet that need, if it was actually a need, it would be a quick thing. So however it is, it needs to be a recurring task, whatever, however you do your task manager or whoever's in charge of it, it has to be done right away. Right away. If we have shared, back in the fall, we had this not happen.
Yep.
And we now 6 months later, there was like a 2-month stretch where people were not following up with it at all. We didn't know about it. And we are feeling it right now.
Yeah.
Of like we had these new people, a lot of new people coming in, and we don't have the, people in place that we normally do. Whatever. This wasn't followed up with, and we realized, people wanted to serve, and they probably couldn't, and I felt so bad about this. We learned a lot. But anyway, follow up within 1 working day, within 24 hours would be our ideal. Again, we often say when someone fills out a Connect card, they have a series of emails and texts they're going to automatically get. But if anyone ever fills out a specific thing on the Connect card, like more information, we also follow up with them right away about that specific thing. Even if they're going to get general information about it later on, they said they wanted to do it. And so however that looks like for you, you've got to follow up within 1 working day is what we would say.
Yep. And I would have a if they sign up to serve, have a plan of what you're saying to them. In other words, so different large church we went to before here in the Raleigh area. But we signed up to, we went a handful of times before we found New City when we were just like looking for a church. We went to this larger church and we did a fill out Connect cards. We signed up to serve. And I remember, if I remember right, the email that we got from them was basically like, where do you want to serve? I mean, it was probably longer than that, but it didn't give any like options. And this was a large church. And so we're like, I don't know. Like, what are my options? Can I don't know. I don't think I'm qualified for some things. Like, where can I serve? And so I think just leaving it open ended like that. And for us, it kind of we didn't respond honestly. And we were kind of looking at a different church anyways. But when you kind of have so many options, it's it makes it difficult to make a decision, especially if you don't have necessarily like a ton of experience in one area. Like, yeah, if you've served in kids forever, you're probably you know every church needs that. But
Yeah.
if you're just kind of like generic, I want to serve somewhere, but I don't know where, and you just ask someone like, where do you want to serve? They don't know the positions that are needed, especially if they're new to the church. So make sure you have an idea of whether you're going to communicate the specific needs that you have, or give them a list of what they can choose from, something that you can give people that they can actually tell you this is where they want to serve, or this is where they're interested in serving, without just leaving it open-ended and kind of putting the responsibility on them to pick something.
Yep. And that's regardless of the size of your church, especially if
Yeah.
you're a new church or a church plant, or you got people who are signing up who've never done this before. They don't know anything.
Yep.
And you might think it's obvious that you have needs, but they don't know. People just don't know. And so
it's-
you want to tell them.
And it's okay to kind of just like communicate it from the stage. It's okay to be clear with people about needs that you have. When people sign up to serve, obviously, if someone signs up to serve and they only want to greet, and you don't really have a need there, but somewhere else, but that's all they want to do, I'd rather have them greet there. I'd rather have them serve there than nowhere. But no one's gonna fill a need if they don't know that there's a need there. So I think it's okay to communicate with someone like, hey, here's some of the things we have available. We do have a strong need here, if that's the strength of yours, or if that's something you're interested in. But if not, here are some other options. So that way they can know, like, hey, maybe there is an actual need, and I'm not just picking somewhere. So I think being honest about those needs is a helpful thing as well.
So follow up within one working day. There's nothing worse than saying we need people to serve, and then you wait a week or even like 4 days. It's like, I thought you said you wanted this, and it just seems like it's not that big of a deal. So
And
follow up.
here's another little tip for following up within one day. If you want to make it super easy, if you're like, I don't have time to do it, just write an email and copy and paste it. Like that. So I follow up with community groups. Anyone who signs up with that, I follow up with them the next day. And community groups, it's literally just check. Like, we have no other information from them. And so my initial email, it's unless something changes like on our end for community groups, like they're on a break right now or something like that. But if it's just at like normal time when groups are meeting, I just have a generic email I send, because I need more information from them. It's basically, here's how community groups work.
Yep.
Here's some information I need from you. And so it takes 10 seconds. Like, I type in their email, go to the last one, copy and paste it in, and then I can follow up from there. So there's really no reason, if you're working, whatever your first day working is after Sunday, that you can't at least get this process started of communicating back with them.
So do it quickly.
Yep.
Number 5, limit how much someone can serve. Now, the other thing that goes with this is that this needs to be firm. So it can't be just we say this, but if you want to serve a lot, we don't care.
Yeah.
So this goes with the expectations, saying like once a month. And then if somebody wants to serve a lot, we have people that we allow to serve twice a month because they really want to. And but that's it. We have experienced, and if you've been doing this for a while, you have experience. If you're new to this, you will experience people saying they want to serve a lot. You will let them serve a lot, and then they will stop serving because they're too much. They got burnt out.
Yep.
Or maybe they feel like if they start serving again, it's going to happen to them again. Or bad experiences from previous churches.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be willing to tell people no and not have all your positions filled all the time, because people will, because they want to help, say they want to do it.
Yep.
And then they'll get frustrated and realize this is too much, and they feel bad like going back, so they could just like not serve at all, or take we've had, I don't want to say a lot, but we've had a good number. I mean, it's all relative to your size, right?
Yep.
I guess, of people who served a lot and then we're like, we're not sure about this. And so they like took a step back completely, and then they like never served again or moved or whatever. And so you gotta be firm with this. Now, there are exceptions. If somebody, again, like clearly really likes to do this and wants to do this and maybe wants to be a leader in some way, you could let them do it more. Or if it's someone who might, be a potential staff member or whatever one day, obviously they need to have avenues to do that and to show that. And so, but that has to be the exception. So we have a couple of people who serve, like the guy who runs a lot of our production stuff has kind of started to kind of lead that stuff. He'll serve more than average, but he really wants to do it. He likes to do it. He might potentially want to do ministry vocationally one day in the future. Yeah. The same thing with band. Like we will, especially because, band and production is more serving time than most. That we'll tell people no, even kids, because you're missing a service. Even if you have multiple services, it's still a big time commitment because you serve and then you go. So you're there a long time. You have to be really firm, even if you're desperate for people, because in the long term, people will stay if they feel like, it's not a big burden for them. But if it feels like a big burden, even if they invited that burden, you will lose people quicker than you would imagine. So you got to be firm.
And I think if you want to talk about exceptions, I think it's helpful to only make those exceptions once someone has proven's maybe not the right word, but kind of proven that they'll be consistent with once a month.
Yeah.
So like I can think of one guy we have, or one couple, they had to take a lot of time away from the church from COVID because of like some relationships they had with people, they were one of the last ones to come back permanently. And when he came back, he basically told the person who's leading our serve team, is like, I want to serve a lot. He's like, I don't like how much I've missed. Like it was understandable why they missed so much.
Yeah.
But he's like, I don't like how much I missed. I want to be here. I want to serve a lot. Please don't use me. And he was like clear. He's like, please don't use me once a month or just once a month. But he wasn't new. Like he had shown,
Right.
he'd been
Yeah.
here for years, and he had shown that he's consistent and that that he doesn't, that he's been honest when it's been too much and had to take a step back or whatever. So like we kind of knew where the gauge was with him, and it wasn't just a new person coming on saying like I like to serve a lot,
Yeah.
but you don't really know what that means to them. So I think once you have a track record of people, if they're coming to you, not if you're coming to them,
Yeah.
then maybe you can have a little bit of flex room there. But I think you need a long track record with people of knowing that they're going to be consistent, that they actually like doing what they're doing, and not just saying that because kind of they I think people are well intentioned. Like I think people say that with good
Yeah.
intentions, but they just don't realize that they have limitations. And so you want a little bit of a track record before making those exceptions, but they should really be exceptions. Like we have people that have served for 4 years, 5 years that are once a month still. So it's not like once they hit a
Yeah.
breaking point,
Mhm.
then we got to get more out of them. But I think we want to see some longevity out of them before we ask them to do a little bit more.
And you got to be clear too that not like with that, not maybe saying one thing like you only have to serve once a month, but then people that have served a long time, there's like this pressure that you're not as good if you don't serve as
Mm.
much. Like when I was in college, I was a part of a church for a couple of years. That was unintentionally very much like unless you serve a lot, you're not really faithful.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't. Maybe this is a bad way of putting it. It can people with good intentions can want to serve a lot, but it can be annoying to have a 5-day work a week job,
Mm.
and then you serve a bunch. So then you're there Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
3 out of the 4 weeks. I mean, that's just a lot to do,
Yeah.
and not a lot of time. I mean, you get 1 day off a week
Mm.
essentially. I mean, I know church doesn't necessarily work, but you have to be there all the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you got to limit it, and you've got to be firm. The default has to be no. There can be exceptions, but they have to be exceptions. And if someone wants to serve a lot, make sure that they've been consistent where they are first, and not someone just really excited to help and then get burnt out.
Yep.
That was number 5. Number 6, clear scheduling and expectations and training. So when people sign up to serve and they are serving, we're a fan of, especially since we do once a month, so it's a little bit easier, or twice a month for some people. You serve the same Sunday every month. And so it makes it easier for people to schedule stuff. And of course, if they've got a vacation or something, they're not going to move it because they were supposed to serve on that Sunday.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the more likely to show up, the more likely to remember. And they just know, like, the first Sunday a month is my Sunday.
Mhm.
We've also found that people can be proactive about ahead of time saying they're not going to be there or trying to find someone to help cover their spot because they know what's going to happen.
Yep.
And so being clear on when they're going to serve, being clear on expectations. It can't just be, hey, show up and stand at a door, because very quickly people will start getting on their phones. They don't understand the why. And so it doesn't have to be this big drawn out thing. But if somebody signs up to serve, there needs to be some basic, here's what this is going to look like.
Mhm.
Here's the training for it. And here's why it's important. But you just got to be clear on those things, on the schedule and expectations of what it looks like. Don't assume that they're just going to know what they have to do.
Yep. And I think every every position needs some sort of training involved, even something like greeting. Now, it's not like a big drawn out process, but what we do is pretty much any position they shadow someone doing it.
Hmm.
So even if it's greeting,
Yeah.
which everyone knows how to stand at a door, like everyone knows how to say hi, but their first Sunday they're shadowing, so to speak, another person that's serving in that position. Now, in reality, they're just kind of another person serving. Like
Yeah.
they're both greeting on opposite sides of the door or whatever. But they can see someone doing it, and so it that kind of adds a little bit of a level of training. And obviously, depending on the position, more training is probably involved than others.
Yeah.
But like there should always be some, like in my opinion, there should always be a week where they're kind of partnered with or doing it with somebody else, so they see what you're actually supposed to be doing.
Yep.
Because like you said, you can say greet at the door, and I could pull out my phone. I could get distracted with one person
Yeah.
and well-intentioned be in a conversation, but miss 30 people that walk in behind them. And so seeing someone who's actually doing it well do it, I think is really, regardless of position, a really important part of your training.
Yeah, even in greeting, it's like that. Maybe it's not too difficult, but it shows, oh, this matters. Like
Mhm.
I have to see how this works, and so
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And I would also say this too. Just like you need to follow up quickly, you also need to schedule them quickly. So for us, for example, if we serve once a month, and let's say somebody wants to serve, I don't know, on the first Sunday of the month,
Mhm.
but they signed up to serve on the first Sunday of the month, so the next first Sunday is not 4,
Right.
if not 5 on a 5-week,
Right.
that can seem like, oh, this doesn't really matter. And so what you can do, like us, even if someone's going to be on a certain Sunday, their shadowing Sunday can be sooner than that.
Yep.
Because they just need to see, they need to experience. We do like a serve team huddle beforehand, so they get to go to that. They get to be with that person, so they're not waiting maybe 2 months before they actually like do it on their own.
Yeah.
And so yeah, if there's any training involved, you're gonna want to do it quickly because again, even if you follow up quickly and then you say, all right, we'll sign you up for a month. It's like I thought you said you needed something.
Yep.
And so get them in there quickly and then get them on the whatever their schedule will look like.
Yes.
So all that needs to be clear. Number 7, share stories of how serving changed a life. And so this is really helpful. Whether it's every once in a while, if somebody sends me an email or whatever, I'll mention the sermon. We do what we call New City Stories. I don't know, once a quarter or so, where we just have a video of how New City has impacted. Like we'll interview or just do like a testimony video of a person or maybe a couple of how New City has made a difference in their life, or this every on our yearly anniversary we have a bunch of people share how one way New City's impacted them, and you hear a lot of community and you hear a lot of this person did this for me, and so highlighting how the church has made a difference in people's life encourages people to serve, because you might hear stories from time to time of what's happening, but the average person doesn't.
Yep.
They're giving and they're serving and they have community and they like the church, but they can not understand the impact that we make collectively together. And so being intentional about how the church is making a difference is important. And it can't just be the music was awesome and the preaching was great, because that doesn't show people the difference that they are making. And so you've got to be intentional about sharing how the church has made a difference, being the church, and not just I came and the preaching was amazing and whatever. So yeah, you got to share stories. They don't have to be big ones, but every once in a while, if you do a weekly newsletter, if there's something short you want to throw in there, not everyone reads those, so you just got to be. I wouldn't necessarily only do it in that. But find places where people can talk about the difference the church has made in their life. It'll encourage people to continue to serve and to show them what they're doing matters.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, that obviously, like as a pastor, the preaching is an important part of the church, but it's not the sole reason why someone will stick at a church. It can be part of it, but it's not people aren't gonna put up with poor everything else just because the pastor's good. And so we know that, but I think our people don't always realize that. And so communicating well that like this is the reason people are coming back. This is the reason people are calling this church home. It's not because of me. It's not because of pastor, really. It's because of the people that are making them feel welcome, or making their kids feel safe, or making sure the service goes off without a hitch, or whatever, all these different reasons that people are involved in, but making sure people know that they're the reason that people are really calling this church home, and it's not because of the wonderful preaching or anything like that. But I think a lot of us know that, or would say that to ourselves. But I don't think a lot of people really think about that, because I feel like we're kind of harping on greeting, but because greeting, it can feel kind of insignificant sometimes. Like you're just standing at a door and holding it, and there's a doorstop that could hold it for you. And there's it doesn't seem like the most important thing. Like it's, in my opinion, it's fun. Like it's fun to greet people, but it doesn't seem like as life or death as maybe serving on the worship team, or like controlling the sound, or watching kids, or whatever. But like making it clear, like this is people, the first steps they take in the door are some of the most important. And so this is a huge part of the church, I think, will help people realize that what they're doing is actually a big deal.
Yeah, when people talk about how welcoming it feels, it's because somebody was there. And you might not have felt like saying hi was that big of a deal, but clearly it was a big deal to them. So however you can do that, talking about how the community's made a difference, you could do it online, social media too, take a picture, someone can write a brief like, here's how the church has impacted me. But just share stories of how people are being impacted by the church, and not talk about the preaching and the music. But any other area, people feel like, oh, I'm actually making a difference. So, and then last but not least, number 8, to attract and keep a volunteer, is something we talk about, is to do a yearly partnership, membership, whatever you call it, follow-up. So we, every January, I'm finally glad that this coming January will actually be like for real. Last couple of years, it's been hard with COVID and who's here, who's not, and whatever. But we ask people, if you're a partner here, to serve, to be in a group, and to give. And of course, there's seasons of life where things are different, and so it's not legalistic at all. But we get to say, hey, you're not, if you're still in here, especially if they're still coming, it's pretty obvious. One of the things we ask, how can we, get you serving again? And I don't know, Brian sends them out, so he can say how it is. But one of the things you have to be careful of is not, you want to be willing to put the ball in their court, not be like, hey, if you're interested in serving, let us know. When if that's something you want people to do, you kind of have to let them know, hey, we know this isn't happening. We would like it to happen if you want to be on mission with us. So you can explain how you do it. But you got to be clear. It's not like oh, if you want to do this, it's like, no, this isn't happening. We want to encourage you in that way.
Hmm.
And so if you have committed to this church and you want to be on mission with this church, again, especially if we're clear on expectations and we don't burn people out, we do want people to serve because they do make a big difference. And it's good for the church, but it's also really good for them. And so the yearly partnership follow-up where we say, hey, we follow up with everybody and we're willing to say, hey, this isn't happening. What's going on? Also helps people get back plugged in, maybe if they had taken a step back.
Yeah, so every January we send out an email, and basically what the email looks like is I thank them for being a partner for another year or for this past year, and I just repeat. I send this to everybody, regardless of if they're doing it or not, to say like just a reminder. We ask our partners to do these number of things, and it's a small list. And if they're doing it, then I just say, and it looks like you're already doing all those things. So that's awesome. And then ask them if they want to continue being a partner again, and let them know that there's no change that needs to be done on your end. Like, you're doing everything great. And if they're not, then I just, I say, these are the things we expect. I notice that you're not taking this one step, whether it's giving or serving or whatever. And then I think I just ask them, do you have a plan, or can you let me know what your plan is to make this happen? And so it's not necessarily, why aren't you giving, or when are you going to start giving? Because if they lost their job or something, we didn't know about it. We don't want it to. We're not trying to guilt them to do it. And I've had multiple people that were like, "Hey, we're in a really tough season right now. We know we need to be doing it, and we just need a little bit of time." With something along those lines. It's like, cool. Communicate with us, and we're good. Or we can't. A certain season of life we can't serve, but we really want to get back in, and so follow up with us a few months down the road. And I'm good with that. Like, as long as we're in communication and they understand that it's an expectation. Obviously, we're not going to keep pushing it out for 2 years, keep like pushing it out. But that hasn't happened with us yet. Maybe it will down the road. But right now, it's just let us know what your plan is. And the vast majority, if they respond, are, here's our plan, or thanks for the reminder, or something along those lines. Because when we do our partnership classes, our membership classes, we tell them this is an expectation, and when they sign up for it, we repeat, this was your expectations. Like, the yearly email is not the first time they're hearing about it. It's not like they're like, whoa, why are you asking me to give now? Like, they've heard it multiple times. Hopefully they remember, and it's just another reminder. And so for the vast majority of case, if not every case, it's been well received and has not been an issue at all, because people know we're going to be following up on this.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, is that it doesn't feel called out or awkward, because it's just, we do this every year. And so it makes these conversations not weird.
Yep.
And especially, again, if someone had a season where they had to step back, and maybe they aren't going to serve again, but it just hasn't come up. Instead of you saying, "Hey, like, are you ready?" It's easy to follow up and say, "Hey, here's where we are. How are you doing?" or whatever. And nobody feels calls out, because they know everybody's getting this, and it's not just them. And so, just a yearly partnership membership follow up, whatever you call it, we do it every January. We've found to be really helpful. And on the flip side, we've also found it to be really helpful for people that were had become really inconsistent, and they were going to leave the church, to kind of be able to have the conversation, as opposed to some awkward, never see you again.
Yeah.
Like, we've had those. I don't know if we had one this year, but I feel like every year we've had at least one where someone's been like, "Oh yeah, we're not coming anymore."
Yep.
And it's like, good to know.
Yeah.
Better than this awkward, like, we'll see you every once in a while. We don't know what happened. We follow up with everybody. And so I don't know. It's not awkward.
And this has nothing to do with serving, but just a little extra plug for doing the yearly follow up. Like, if you're doing this, you have to be okay with this will make you not have inflated membership numbers, which is a good thing. But also, it could be a little blow to your ego, maybe, if you really like having those big numbers, which I think you shouldn't. But like, there's especially this year, we had a lot of people move. We didn't really have any that not that I remember that got removed for like other reasons outside of that. But like from December to January, because that's just when we kind of prune it, it dropped significantly, mostly from people moving or people that we just. They didn't respond, but also we know that they're not coming back.
And it was like kind of the end of COVID of 2 years.
Exactly.
It's like, you're not coming. This is not happening.
Yeah. So like at first it's like it's a little discouraging, but also we know we know we're following up with the people that want to be followed up with. We know we're counting the people as members of the church that want to be counted as it. We're not having these inflated numbers. So I don't know. I think it's just something to be aware of, that will happen, but I think that's a good thing that happens.
Yep. I agree. So those are 8 tips to attract and keep volunteers. Hopefully some of those things are things that you could do if you're struggling in any of those areas. I think these are all pretty practical. You don't feel like you have to do all of them at once, but even a couple of these can make a big difference.
Yep.
Again, this episode is brought to you by the Church Co. So thechurchco.com/practical, put practical in the promo code, 2 years off for 40%. That's a very long time.
Yes.
And if you want some more resources, practical, you can join the Practical Church Planting Facebook group. and you can ask questions about volunteers or whatever. A lot of people are joining in there.
Yep.
And so check that out. And there's a lot of free resources at practicalplanting.com as well. And thanks for being with us. We will be with you next week on Practical Church Planting.